A lot of people don't know what the situation is, so that there's word that some of the Fano groups are actually fighting each other. You told me that you've got that there's a new sort of coalition of Fano groups that you're part of.
Yeah.
So what is the actual situation there now?
Well, thanks, Jeff. Well, I have to put this in context.
Okay.
So somehow, for people that are not familiar with Ethiopia, with that in mind, I have to detail what kind of government, what kind of governmental structure that we have. In Ethiopia, we have three layers of government. At the top, we have the federal. In the middle, we have the region, one of which is the Amhara region. And below the region, we have the district or county level, which we call Warada. Now, in the Amhara region, we have over 100 of these Waradas. And what happened a year ago was that the regional government suddenly collapsed. And in the vacuum that ensued, no less than 100 Fano groups sprouted. These Fano groups are united by the overarching struggle against genocide. They are also at the same time a very diverse group in terms of numbers, leadership, firepower, and organization, even capability. Over the past year, we have been desperately trying to get all these groups under one umbrella, and our success, I must say, has been significant. We have now come, more or less, to two large groupings. One of these is the Amhara Fano People's Organization, to which I belong, and it has under its umbrella the majority of Fano groups, about 2/3 of the total number of Fanos, I guess. The remaining Fano groups, like I said, about 1/3 of the total, will hopefully succeed in establishing an organization that would bring them under one organization, that would bring them under one umbrella organization, and like I said, bringing the number of Fano groups to two, eventually to two. Once these two Fano groups are settled, the next step would be to unify these two groups into one organization, thus closing the chapter on the question of Amhara unity. But to be honest, I must say this, even with these two Fano organizations, it would be possible to fight and to win this war against the genocidal regime. The morale of government troops has more or less collapsed, and the only reason that we are not at the gate of Addis Ababa as we speak has been the lack of unity, and that more or less has been solved at the present moment. And because of this, because of these developments, like I said, the fact that we have reduced the number of Fano groups from over 100 to two means that we are poised at the present moment to secure a significant military victory in the near future.
That sounds all fine, but what are you guys even arguing over? I mean, people don't understand what is the sticking point that you're even arguing over. Is it just power? Is it who's going to have power over certain parts? Is it offices? What are you guys even having rivalry over?
So let me go back. About 2 months ago, all Fano groups, 7 in number, came together to forge unity and establish one organization. This was 2 months, like I said, 2 months ago. And indeed, they succeeded in establishing the Amhara Fano People's Organization. This is the organization that I belong to now. Everything was pristine until the last minute, which was, the time that we had to elect the leader of the organization. Now, to this end, a fair, democratic, and transparent election was held, and this was a process in which the representatives of the 7 founding organizations participated. Unfortunately, and you know, if there's an election, there's a winner and there's a loser. Unfortunately, the losing side, or the losing candidate and his supporters were unable to concede defeat and opted to leave the organization. Now, this is where this schism or division has happened. That was tragic and regrettable, no doubt. You know, because every time, if we were to walk out every time that we lose an election, not only will we have no organization, but we will also offer no viable alternative to the genocidal regime. I should also point out, and I should also add, because we're fighting genocide and we have a just cause, we must respect, we must start respecting the will of the majority and at the same time too, the irrevocable rights of the minority. These two are inseparable parts of a democratic movement. They should be inseparable parts of a democratic movement. And we know that they are inseparable parts of a democratic constitution and the rule of law. Only when we respect these principles can we bring our country to normalcy, which is all what this struggle is all about. Failure to concede defeat in an election has become the norm in Africa, as we know. Mm-hmm. And it's embarrassing. I mean, frankly speaking, it's embarrassing, and also a source of bitterness. I should say that this has become part of our story. Part of the story of our struggle. Okay. But despite all this, we're still hopeful. Our struggle shall prevail in the end because it has, like I said, a just cause. But not only in our struggle, but in all struggles, there are many ups and downs in the journey. But we accept that. It is these ups and downs, by the way, which will make the final victory extraordinarily precious. This is the story. It's about winning an election. And it's a story about the losing sides failure to concede that they have been defeated by the election in the election. I mean.
Well, let me then get this quick question in. I heard a rumor that you had apparently suggested that negotiation with Abiy was possible. Did you say this? Do you believe this? And if so, how could you possibly trust him? Would you negotiate with Abiy, or is it a case of no, hands down, he's got to go, or he's got to be prosecuted? What's your organization's stance on that?
We haven't taken a stand on this issue as an organization because this is an organization that has been established only a few weeks ago. Okay. But I want to make a categorical statement. I never made such a statement. Okay. And I do believe what you did, which is that it's very difficult to trust Abiy Ahmed, the regime. It's very difficult to trust them, like you said, and I can't imagine how we could sit together and negotiate. But ultimately, this decision has to be made by the organization. It's not a decision that I personally could make. Okay. We have an organization. It has a collective leadership. It has laws, and that law clearly stipulates that all decisions have to be made collectively. They could not be made by one single individual. Okay. Whatever position he or she may have in the organization. So this is not my decision to make. This is the decision that the organization has to make, and no decision has been made so far. And I should point out, no one in the organization so far has come out in support of negotiation. We're unified on this point. We're all fighting until we bring this regime. We have change. We're not negotiating about change. We want a a change of regime. We want a change of government. No one, to my knowledge, has any other view in the present coalition, in the present organization that we just formed.
You said that the units are on the poise to have a victory. The thing is, I have to ask, okay, that paints a very rosy picture of victory, but you still have the OLA out there. You still have the TPLF up north, who still has heavy weaponry. Sooner or later, you're going to have to either confront or deal somehow with those two groups. So it's not just a case of facing the federal forces. You've got two other groups out there. How can you possibly deal with those?
Well, at the present moment, the most effective fighters against the government are FANOs. That should be clearly established.
Mm-hmm.
We're the ones who are fighting the government on a massive scale, on a regional basis in all corners of the region. We're the ones who are scoring victories almost every single day. So, I mean, if you look at the conflicts, the conflicts that are happening in the country, there are conflicts in different regions, but the most effective fighting, like I said, is taking place in the Amhara region. And we are posed in that sense. We are posed, to bring down this government. We are the most effective fighting force. So from this perspective, I think other organizations have to concede. They have to recognize that the Amhara Fano will be a significant force, will be a major force in a post Abiy Ahmed regime. At some point, of course, now we're preoccupied with the fighting in the region, in the Amhara region, but at some point we will have to deal with other organizations and other groups. We'll cross the bridge when we come to it. Well, that's a good question, Jeff. Some people say that I made a statement to that effect, and that's not true. I never made that statement. Now, let me put that in the proper context. Because of state-sponsored politicization of ethnicity, in which the Amharas have been cast as villains, in the sense that they were singled out as the enemies of all other ethnic groups. They have been attacked on the basis of their ethnicity now for over 3 decades. That's a long time. In all this time, it was primarily the Amhara elite which did all it could to discourage the rise and institutionalization of identity politics in every facet of society, whether it should be in politics, academia, culture, the economy, or what have you. It was the Amhara elite that passionately advocated for a state and constitution based on ideas as opposed to ethnicity. There's a legacy of 3 decades of full opposition to the politicization of ethnicity, which has now led us to state-sponsored genocide. Now, if we narrow this period to the 6 years since the present ruling party, that is the Prosperity Party, came to power, it's also the same story. When the state machinery was massacring Amharas almost on a daily basis in the Oromo region, particularly in the part of the Oromo region called Wallagga, which we now call Akandema in the Hebrew language, by the way, which means a field of blood. The Amhara people did not run to their guns. It was to the federal government that they pleaded for the killings to stop, and when that did not work, it was to the international community, including the United Nations, which has a genocide office, that they went and pleaded their case. But no one listened. I was in the midst of all this. The lessons from Rwanda were not heeded. Rwanda, by the way, is where in 1994, if this needs reminding, where almost 1 million people perished in the space of a few weeks after 3 decades of state-sponsored politicization of ethnicity. And the same story was repeating itself in Ethiopia. Thus, I come to the main point. The Amhara people who are defending themselves against genocide, which has been amply documented by the international community, are not war mongers. We are not fighting this war because we love fighting. We're fighting this war because we have to defend ourselves. This is a fight for survival for us. And to this end, we have built up a momentum. I think it's clear to everyone that this momentum is what's changing so many things in this country. We cannot lose this momentum. For if we lose this momentum, we may not be able to rekindle it. A large part of this momentum is built on the idea that all peaceful options have been exhausted and we have no choice but to fight to the end. The regime is aware of this and it's trying to change that sentiment by raising the possibility of a negotiated settlement. Once we lose the momentum, the regime is planning to return to the battlefield with vengeance. We know this from experience, but this is what the regime is thinking, a thinking that has evolved over 3 decades and has now culminated into genocide. The regime is not pursuing peace, so that should be clear.
Okay. All right, just a moment. Okay, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, the regime is not pursuing peace because it has been captured by genociders. It's not in the nature of genociders to negotiate and settle for peace. Neither I nor the rest of FANO are against negotiations on the basis of principle. Some in the international community have misunderstood us. What we want the international community to do is to understand us in the proper context. And it's this context that I've just detailed.
Well, since you bring up the international community, have you or your organization had any back channel communications with the Americans to discuss the possibility of FANO being victorious, of taking over? Because they're the ones that really count. Have you had any communication with them at all?
No, we haven't, unfortunately. But I should say this, that knowing the Americans, I think that they understand that this is not, that this issue will not fade away, as the government is hoping that it will.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I know that they're well intentioned, but we have to understand that this is election season in the U.S. these days, and we all know that this is a very exciting and very consequential election. So I don't think that will be attracting much attention amongst the Americans for the next 6 months or so.
Okay.
So we're not expecting them to be knocking on our door anytime soon.
Okay. Well, this brings me to the $1 million question then, because it's front of my mind, and it's the front of many people's minds. It was one thing when the FANO movement got rolling to fight against Amhara genocide, and you could say, okay, we'll figure out a program later. We'll figure out a political program later. First, we've got to do victory. But people are losing confidence. People are losing hope. They want to know what you stand for, what your policies, how you're going to set up the political process once you win. What do you say to that? Because people are waiting to know about that.
Well, I understand. I understand the concern. I understand the question. But we want everyone to know. Everyone. I mean, amongst the Amharas, amongst Ethiopians, and in the international community, that our primary and overarching cause is to stop genocide. Now, this fight against genocide has three goals. One goal to be attained is the accountability. Accountability for genocidal crimes committed by the state over the past 6 years. These crimes include mass murder, over 1 million IDPs, and hate crimes, including incitement to violence. The second goal is the stopping of the ongoing genocidal war that's being waged by the regime in the Amhara region, where civilians are being wantonly and deliberately targeted. A third goal is the prevention of genocide. Now, this means all layers of the state have to be cleansed from genociders, and the root cause of the genocide, which is the constitution, has to be changed thoroughly. At the root cause of the genocide is the hate politics of politicized ethnicity. We need to move away from ethnic politics as a nation. We need a state to guide us away from politicized ethnicity. Ethiopia has no greater need or cause at the present moment than this objective. Farmer's greatest achievement and historical legacy would be its impact on ethnic politics, which is what has pushed our country to genocide. There is no, and I repeat this, there is no greater cause for Ethiopia or Amharas than this.
But have you worked out any kind of, even in a discussion phase, have you worked out any kind of process for, say, this cleansing of, because as I understand it, this has infiltrated every level of government, so that you have people sympathetic to these kind of ethnic politics at every level. So have you and your colleagues even discussed, okay, how are you going to do this? When you get to Eretz Kilo, how would this work? Have there been discussions about how the process would start? Because you're going to have to collaborate with others, and yet you're also going to have to get rid of the people who seem to have an agenda of slaughtering you.
Yeah, of course, we have thought about this, and we have a detailed plan on ways to do it. Now, I mean, like I said, we need, ultimately, the genocide has to be tackled from its root cause, which is the constitution, which is 3 decades of ethnic politics. Now, to do that, first, what we need is a state that's not engulfed, that has not embraced ethnic politics. We need a state that's committed to move away the country, the nation, from ethnic politics. So what we need, essentially, the starting point would be to change the regime. So we're working towards regime change. That's the beginning. But once we attain that, unfortunately, by military means, because all peaceful means to achieve this end has been closed. Now, once we achieve regime change, then we'll have to establish a transitional government. And in this transitional government, all stakeholders in our society will have to participate. And this is something that we have to work with other Ethiopians.
Could that take the form of an elections, or would that have to be something that would come later?
Yeah, I mean, there will be a transitional period. And in this transitional period, there will be a government of national unity. Mm. And once we have the government of national unity, it will work towards a new constitution that the nation needs. Okay. A constitution that will move the nation away from ethnic politics. That will move away, that will purge the state from genociders, from agents of ethnic politics. Once we attain that, once we have the constitution in our hand, once we put a constitution that's by the people, for the people, then we could move towards election. Of course, inevitably, everything has to be decided by election. But what we know, for a fact at the present moment is that the vast majority of Ethiopians, the vast majority, if not everyone, if not every single Ethiopian, but the vast majority are tired of ethnic politics, and the majority have come to a recognition that ethnic politics will end in disaster. That if we are to continue as a nation, that if we are to build a democratic order, that if we are to have development, economic development, if we are to have social transformation, that we need to move away from ethnic-based politics. That this is, that the state is doing disservice to the nation by embracing and promoting ethnic politics. I think there's a consensus by the majority of Ethiopians to this end at this point. So we need to institutionalize this. We need to have the will of the majority. We need to express the will of the majority through governmental. I mean, it has to be this idea has to become the state. The state has to express and respect the will of the majority.
Let me change tack just slightly. Can you comment, please, on what happened recently in Gondar? Because you had the kidnapping and murder of a little 2-year-old girl, and then when people go out to peacefully protest, they fire into the crowd. They kill at least 3 people. What are your thoughts on this? Because this was horrific, and it basically, to me personally, demonstrates that, yes, you're kind of past the point where peaceful protest is going to do it, where peaceful means is going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, the situation in Gondar is tragic. But surprisingly, even the Amhara regional government has acknowledged that the regime's security forces are involved in abduction of civilians for ransom. When not only in this country but elsewhere, when troops lose hope, the discipline is one of the first casualties. And this is what's happening in the Amhara region. Not only do government troops engage in widespread atrocities against civilians, but they also become plunderers, looters. They confiscate private property at will, especially in the countryside.
Yeah.
And this is a consequence of the government losing the war. By the way, we condemn this murder of the 2-year-old child in the strongest possible terms. We also condemn the killings of civilian protesters by the regime, and urge the youth in Gondar to join us. Now is the time to intensify the struggle.
What do you say then to the recruit who, because they're kidnapping the families of Fano leaders, they're kidnapping the families and relatives of Fano members? That's their reprisal. What do you say to the recruit who goes, well, okay, I could join you, but, suppose they go after my wife, suppose they go after my kid?
Lord, I mean, in all struggles, we have to pay sacrifice. So, this is part of the struggle. We have to bear all the consequences and all the dangers that come with our just cause. Unless we bear the consequences of our actions, the consequences of our struggle, we will be like the Tutsis in Rwanda. So this is, we have no choice.